Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This week I've finally got back to a proper RPG, albeit a roguelike one, with Legion's Crawl. Developed and published by Turnspender, it was released on Steam on July 31st, 2018, with a full release on August 29th. After such a long string of RPG lights, Legion's Crawl isn't exactly a super complex RPG, but is definitely more in-depth than many that I've covered of late. Legion's Crawl is a turn-based roguelike, using a classless system with several characters to select from that modify the rules rather than providing abilities, as well as a skill tree selection that lets you customize your character by choosing a particular mix of skills according to your desired playstyle. As far as plot goes, I'm honestly not sure there actually is one. There certainly doesn't seem to be an intro at all. You just select your character, the difficulty level, set your skills, and bam, you're right into the dungeon. And you know what? I'm okay with that. The game knows what it's going for and it goes right to it, and I can appreciate that. Gameplay resembles roguelikes for the most part, although I was strongly reminded of mystery dungeon style roguelikes. Your one character moves about randomly generated and populated levels, and after taking a turn, all your enemies take their turns. This is done instantly and seamlessly. Although limited to one movement or action per turn, a variety of activities can actually be done within the dungeon. But let's start with character creation, because that defines quite a bit of the game. Whenever you're starting a new game, you can select one of 5 difficulties from Tourist to Legend, which modify the abilities that you have, how much food you consume, your loot, whether it's identified, etc., etc. You also select a hero. Each hero is represented by an anthropomorphic animal and causes changes to the game. Randy, for instance, uses the basic randomization rules and is pretty standard, while Imani causes all attacks against anyone, including yourself, to automatically hit. Aaron causes all damage to be doubled, and so on and so forth. These selections can definitely change the feel of the game overall. You then select up to 6 skill paths from the 21 available. Each skill path offers several skills which you can buy as you level up. Choosing 6 of them just gives you options on how to build your character over time. Some skill paths work better with others, for instance. The melee combat skill path boosts your melee abilities over time and works well with the berserk and endurance skill paths, while the various magical paths, such as Pyro or Cryomancer, work best with spirituality. But more on the particular skills in a little bit. Once you've created your character, you're placed in an overhead view room. A mini-map is displayed automatically, overlaid over the graphics, while your character has 4 main bars to the right-hand side of the screen. Experience, earned by slaying monsters, life, that represents your health, soul, that represents your magic points, and neuter, that represents hunger or nutrition. There's also a gold counter to keep track of how much gold you earn. However, there are additional character abilities. Each character has 4 primary ability scores: Strength, Agility, MGC, and Intelligence. Strength modifies weapon damage, Agility modifies attack percentages and critical hit chance, while MGC and Int modify magic combat in much the same way. The character has life and soul recovery that govern how fast their life and soul bars replenish over time, damage that is based on weapon damage, attack, which modifies hit rates, critical, which gives a percentage chance to crit, and a modifier. These stats are repeated for any offhand weaponry you may have, as well as for ranged weaponry. Finally, there's magic power that modifies how hard spells hit, and resistances to various damage types. These stats are all affected by 2 main things: the skills a character gains with each level, and the equipment they acquire. Each character can equip up to 7 items: a ranged weapon, which is usually a gun, ammunition, something for the main hand, usually a weapon, something for the offhand, which can be a weapon or a shield, body, which is usually body armor, a neck slot for amulets, and a ring slot for rings. Items discovered are not automatically identified except at the lowest difficulty, and may be cursed, although most weapons and armor are actually automatically identified once you're put on. Often, for accessories such as rings and amulets, you'll have to ID them with scrolls even after you put them on, since they're not obvious. As far as inventory goes, a number of things can be used directly from the inventory, such as scrolls and potions that cause various effects, and wands that can be fired at targets to produce spell effects. If your character can actually cast a spell due to skill selection, they are assigned to hotkeys which can be triggered when you're actually roaming around on the map. Certain items can be found in the dungeon besides enemies. Although there are treasure chests which can be looted during a turn, there are also fountains that can produce a random effect, anvils that allow for the creation of gear, and cooking stations that allow for the creation of alchemical items and so forth. These crafting stations may also be used to break down existing things to basic material. Each station may be used only once, but a few different tasks may actually be executed at one time. One can also encounter merchants in the dungeon, which can be a real lifesaver, especially if you're running low on food, which is actually a common problem to roguelikes that have a hunger bar. You can sell unwanted items to these merchants and buy additional gear, although on most difficulty levels this gear is unidentified, so it's always a little bit of a gamble. Enemies you encounter on each level may have a variety of attack modes and ranges, which can be interesting if you're faced with a number of different complementary creature types. However, if you're an old hand at roguelikes, you're probably used to that sort of thing. There are also traps hidden randomly on certain tiles, which can be discovered by stepping on them, of course, but also occasionally just by entering a tile beside them. The end goal of each level is simply to find the portal down to the next, although one may wish to stick around on a level to build experience for the next one. The food consumption requirement, however, can limit how much you use that. After gaining a certain number of experience, your level raises, which grants you a skill point. A skill may be selected from any of your skill trees, which usually includes one special ability, plus some ability score modifications. Now these can include both penalties and bonuses, which means that it can be a challenge to effectively build a character that is not specialized, since there's often cross-penalization with opposing skill types. Melee-type skills often penalize magic, for instance, while magical skills often penalize melee stats. Each skill must be unlocked within its tree in turn, and occasionally there's a choice for a particular slot, which must be picked between the available skills in that slot. This can rule out choosing other options within that choice, so be sure about your build. Some skills are also locked until later levels as well, which means that you won't simply be able to pour all of your skill points into one particular skill tree. Gameplay is largely mouse and keyboard driven, although there are hotkeys to enter inventory and use spells, and the graphics are passable 3D models and animations. I have to admit that I'm not a big fan of anthropomorphic creatures as the main characters, although they do well enough here, being reminiscent of certain old mascot-style characters. The enemy types can be somewhat weird and goofy, a really mixed bag to be honest, but this called to mind even more the mystery dungeon style of roguelike, which I'm actually a fan of, as I've mentioned, which often have somewhat ridiculous creature types. The music is pretty decent, although I have to question the suitability of certain of the tracks. If you play especially to the second group of levels in this game, you'd probably know what I'm talking about. Still, it's not that bad to listen to, at least for a while. Legion's Crawl is an adequate roguelike for the price. Now, there are better general roguelikes out there, and the presentation is a little bit amateurish, but it is saved by the gameplay, at least in my opinion, and it does make this a bit of a solid play. The instant action focus, the way it harkens back to my particular subset of roguelike, and the depth of the hero types, modifying the rules combined with the selectable skill sets, make for a fair amount of character customization and gameplay that would often simply be offered through equipment creation and augmentation in other games. I'd recommend this one to people who are looking for a reasonably priced roguelike that perhaps doesn't take quite as much analysis as some of the more hardcore offerings out there. It's something that can be tossed down and played casually when free time is short, and I can appreciate that. And at that, I'll leave it here for this week. The link will be in the description below as always. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday, Legion's Crawl. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye.